What's up guys, welcome back to Bradley's Garage. Today we're doing another quick repair on our VW Passat TDI 2012 to 2015. We have a problem with the lower control arm bushings, so let's take a look. Just want to give you guys an idea of how much that tire moves, that whole assembly, when those lower control arm bushings are bad. See how much that moves? Awesome. All right, we got the car off the ground. Apologies, I didn't record the taking off the plastic under tray, but I'll include that link for you right now from our oil change video on this Passat. So if you just need some instructions on how to take the bottom pan cover off, the plastic cover, I'll include that. But basically, we're going to be taking off these lower control arms and replacing those bushings. All right guys, so we got the car in the air. As you can see, we have the jack stands on the subframe itself, because we're going to show you the method where you do not need to drop the subframe at all in order to get this bolt out. On the driver's side, the front control arm bolt is blocked by the transmission, meaning you can't get the bolt out. If you look over here on the passenger side, then you have plenty of room. The oil pan is not in your way, so passenger side is very straightforward. You don't need to worry about anything. But let's show you how to accomplish this on the driver's side. All right, so first thing we want to do is we're going to go ahead and take these two bolts out. These are 16 millimeter. This is what is supporting the transmission, so they call it a dog bone. So we're going to take both of these out, 16 millimeter. So I'm just going to break them loose with the ratchet. They are pretty snug, and then I'll switch over to the Milwaukee and spin them out. You will notice a little bit of drop in the whole engine assembly. Yeah, moves a tiny bit, but keep in mind on this particular layout, the TDI, you have a mount on the passenger frame and the driver frame, so it's kind of just it's just hanging there. All right. Next up, we're going to take our 18 millimeter ratcheting wrench, and you're going to need to put a little cheater on it because the bolts are tight. For the front control arm bolts, a little tight. So I put a little cheater on it. Okay, and then just break it free. And then once you get it free, then you can spin it out. Basically, just keep unthreading it till you're, almost touching the transmission. And then it'll get loose and you can just do it by hand, okay? It's a long bolt, so that's why, it hits the transmission. Okay, so here's the trick part. You wanna get yourself a nice long pry bar. This one's probably a little bit too long. You can get away with a little bit of a shorter one. And then what I do is I come at, this one's a little long, it's hitting the ground, so I just come at a slight angle, all right? And then if I can, let me show you where I'm prying. Okay, so this is where we're at. I'm just prying here so you can see that the whole assembly moves, and I'm just using the subframe as my leverage, okay? All right, so you have your dog bone is now loose, disconnected from the transmission, and we have our bolt here. So all we got to do is just apply a little bit of pressure on the whole assembly, and then it takes a little, just barely squeezes out. And then the difficult bolt is off, and you can just go ahead and release the transmission assembly back, and it'll rest there. And then we can work on the easy one. Okay, on the back one, of course, it's wide open, so you can just get your 18 millimeter impact. And there is a nut on top, so you have to get your wrench again. Actually, when you loosen it, you can actually just put your hand up there. You don't even need the wrench, so it kind of breaks free. I'm going to undo the nut. Okay, and then I can just go ahead and spin this out. All right, it's loose. As you can see, they're quite long. It goes all the way through the subframe. All right, so now we have both 18mm bolts free. Now we can switch over to the 16 and disconnect this from the ball joint. So 3 nuts here. Okay, so now we can just pull straight down on the control arm. And then what I usually do is just go ahead and wiggle it a little bit, and the front mount will come out. Okay, and then once you get the front one out, then the back one will also just pull right out. Okay, now we can take a look here and see that, I mean this, well, yeah, you think it's shot? Yeah, it's total trash. So let's take it back and to the press, and we'll go ahead and swap these out. All right, so if you guys don't want to swap out the bushings, you can just buy the complete arm with the bushings. Aftermarket ones are about $100. The OEM VW ones, however, are $350. We're gonna be using good Lemforder bushings. Both of these together are like $17. So obviously we're trying to show you guys how to do it for the cheapest possible, but then again, you either do need to use like a press like we have here, a 20-ton press. Sometimes you can get away with using a bushing tool. Both AutoZone and O'Reilly's in our area didn't have one big enough. This is like 2.5 inch, so they only had a sleeve that was 2 inch, so it would make it tough. But maybe in your area they got a bushing removal tool that you could borrow and make it easy. So otherwise you have to just take it to somebody and let them press it out. They're not super tight, so we'll go through that right now if you want to tackle it with the press method. So just remember, before you take it out, you want to mark it. I mean, it has 2 little hash marks there, but I like to just put a little paint. As you can see, you have a little mark here on the rubber. So let's just make sure that we are centering it back into the arm when we reinsert it, okay? The other thing I wanted to point out is just so you see how much is exposed on each side. Basically there's a little flat surface here. As the rounding part comes, it's just sticking up. So just, just something to keep in mind before you take it out, so you know exactly how deep to push it. All right, so we just have some old sockets. This is a 1 3/4 inch socket, and we're just going, like I said, this is a 20-ton press, but they're really not, they're not that tight. So usually they just start to come right out, start moving. And get a little pop. Okay, so you don't have to worry, both sides are the same, both sides have the marking, and as you can tell, it's even on both sides, so it doesn't matter which way you insert it. The most important thing is make sure your arrows line up with the marks we made earlier. All right, so we got it positioned, we turned it upside down, we have our marks here where our arrows need to point, and we turned our steel pieces upright so we can get on the flattest part, so we can drive this thing as straight as possible. So just go ahead and press it in. Just keep an eye on things, make sure it's going in straight. It's looking good. Like I said, it's not incredibly tight, but it's snug, no doubt about it. And then we just want to remember where we were, right at that, the rounded corner was exposed. So we want to just double check. We're about in the same place, so that looks pretty good. Take a look. As you can see, we have our marks and our arrows are good. Looks pretty good. Might need to go just a tiny bit more. Yeah, tiny bit more, but I think we're pretty close actually. Perfect, okay. Now let's go ahead and work on the other side. This one rarely goes bad, but while we're in here, let's go ahead and pop it out and put the new one in. Okay, on this side, same 1 3/4. We have our little piston there, little cylinder. We just went to a smaller size here. This is, I believe, 40 millimeters, so you just need to make sure that your cylinder is narrower than that. This is like 36, 37. That rubber is going to fold as we go down, so you'll see. And then make sure you have a deep enough socket to catch the other end. But like I said, it's not insanely tight. You know, we've done some Beamer trailing arms. They're insane. This one, not bad. Okay, I think we got it. All right, just a little bit more. We'll tap it out. And there we go. Okay, so on this one, because it has a rubber flap on both sides, as you can see, we're going to go ahead and just do a little silicone spray. That way that flap will fold in until we push it all the way through. So same technique, that just the reverse of how we took it out. We're going to go ahead and get it in position. Make sure your socket is centered there. And I just lined it, there's like 2 little knobs. It's just parallel with the arm, so I just line them up that way. If you don't put any silicone, then that little flap starts to pinch against the main body of it, and then it doesn't want to slide in. You'll end up tearing things. So just a little silicone spray, that'll disappear. Make sure your jack is tight. Go a little bit bigger. Finish off that last little bit. That's the hard part. Okay, it slid in the rest of the way. And you'll be able to tell if you lift it up here that we didn't come through all the way. So we need to go just a little bit more. So get your small one out, and we basically want to push the middle out a little bit more. Okay, I heard it. Okay, so now we see that it came through. So the only thing left to do now is basically we just need to push it back so it's centered, because we're a little bit in, so that way we got that flap to come out. All right, and the easiest way, you can't really, do this because there's no access. So I just use a little C-clamp with my same 1 3/4, and then I'm just going to go ahead and push that bushing back through, just so we get things centered. And double check. Okay, as you can see, now everything looks good. Both flaps are touching and uniform, neither side is sunken in. Okay, so if you decided just to buy new arms, either aftermarket or OEM, then obviously you were ready for reassembly. If you put the bushings in, replace the bushings like we did, then we're also in the same stage. So let's go ahead and insert it. Okay, so on the driver's side, you just want to turn the wheel all the way to the right, and that'll get it out of your way. First step is to just kind of hold it all the way back to where your ball joint connection is there. Get it started into the rear as as flat as possible. That will help you get it into the groove. And then what you can do is just kind of slide it forward a little bit until you clear the front. And you can also, you can just get a little pry bar right here in the subframe, and you can kind of give it a little bit of help, straighten that rear bushing out a little bit, and that'll help you clear the front. And then the front will slide in. You kind of just pull the wheel forward a little bit, give it a little wiggle. Okay, and then it drops into place. Okay, and then to just get it perfectly straight, I just get a screwdriver and I stick it in the hole and I move it to where it lines up perfectly. And then once you have a straight shot up all the way up top, then you know you're gonna get your bolt through, okay? And just remember, guys, these are single use, so these are stretch bolts. You need to purchase them. We'll put the link in the description below. For 2012, 2013, they're like $6 each. 14 and up, they're like $11 each. Don't ask me why they changed it, but you get that there. And then remember, this one has a nut on top, so I gotta grab that nut on top. Just put your hand up there. Okay, just get it started by hand. Now for the front, we're gonna do just the opposite of what we did when we took it apart. We're gonna get our pry bar in there again, into position. Okay. And the same thing with the front. You just want to make sure it's lined up. It's usually pretty loose, so it's just sitting there, no problem. Okay. Now you can relax transmission a little bit, and we go ahead and get them started by hand. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get this snug so it's all the way flush. Okay, I don't want to tighten it up yet. I just want to leave it flush. All right, so I went inside and I just put the wheel back to straight, and then you can maneuver this to get these nuts started. Get those on. Okay, so those are ready, that's ready. And this back one. You have to get your wrench in there. Okay, got everything hand tight. All right, so what I use, I just take a bottle jack and I go ahead and get the suspension sort of preloaded before I tighten up that front bolt. Okay, so we got it preloaded. Okay, so then after we got it preloaded, I'm gonna go ahead and get the torque wrench on it. This is 70 Newton meters or 51.6 foot-pounds. So we're gonna go ahead and cinch that down. Okay, that's step one. Same thing for the rear. So I got my wrench on the nut, and we're gonna do the same thing here. 51.6, 70 Newton meters. All right, that's step one. Okay, next I'm gonna do the the ball joint side. These are 100 Newton meters or 73.7. These you don't have to replace. The manual doesn't call for that. Okay, You can see this?
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and mark it. We did the initial torque. So we're gonna make a mark here, and we're gonna make a mark here, all right? Now we need to rotate it an additional 180. So we're gonna go from 6 o'clock all the way to 12 o'clock. So I get a little bit bigger wrench here. All right, I had to use my foot to get the leverage because that stretch part is tight. Okay, let's see where we are. Oh, almost 12. Okay, there we go, guys, straight up. All right, after you get your front one torqued, then you can release that bottle jack. Doesn't need to be loaded anymore. The back is basically stationary. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get our wrench up here. And then we're gonna do the same 180. So we're sitting at 12 o'clock now. We need to go around to 6 o'clock. Okay, halfway. Okay, just find your best place where you have leverage. Okay, now we're facing a little bit more. Okay, now we're facing straight back. We started with the facing forward. That's our 180, okay? So now we have our 2 stretch bolts torqued, and we have our 3 nuts for the ball joint. Those are also torqued. All right, so just go ahead and get your pry bar back there. A lot of times this dog bone gets stuck a little bit behind the transmission, so just peel it down, lower it, okay? And then you can kind of keep it there. You can use a littler one too, just to maneuver it, just to get those holes lined up again. So it's pretty easy actually. So remember guys, these also, we'll link them in the description below. These are also stretch bolts, so you will have to use 2 new stretch bolts as well. So the control arm's a no-brainer, you need those 2 bolts. This way, you only have to replace these 2 bolts. Otherwise, if you lower the subframe, you're gonna have to replace these 2 bolts plus the 6 subframe bolts. So you'll have about 40, 50 bucks in bolts instead of this is only $3, so $2 for this one, $1 for this one. So you can save a bunch of money by doing it this method. It's a little bit easier, I think. I don't want to mess around with the subframe. Then you're going to definitely need an alignment. You start messing with the subframe. Here, obviously, I would recommend doing alignment depending on how bad yours were. As you can see, our tires were worn pretty bad on the outside edge, so that's another indication that you got some issues. So let's go ahead and get these snug. These are 16 versus your other one is 18. Okay, and the initial torque setting on these is 50 Newton meters, or it's 36.8 foot-pounds. All right, so we'll go ahead and get those set to our 36.8 or 50 Newton meters. Okay, perfect. All right, so these, we're only gonna go 90. So we're gonna mark it over here at 3 o'clock, and we're gonna go to 6 o'clock. So not as much as the other ones. And these are also smaller, so the other ones are, you know, bigger bolts. Okay. A little bit more. Okay, there's the first one. A little bit more. Okay, all right, we got that secure. All right, so we got the driver's side done. Now, like I said, the passenger side is straightforward. I think you guys got the hang of it. I'll show you just a quick look. Okay, like I said before, you got your 18 here, you have easy access, and then you have your 18 here. Same thing applies, just remember, turn the steering wheel to the left when you're reattaching these. So now let's go ahead and button up the wheels, get them back on, get it back on the ground. Awesome. All right, guys, hope that helps you with your 2012 to 2015 VW Passat TDI control arm, bushing / control arm, depending on which route you want to take. Hopefully we showed you the easiest, quickest, most cost-effective way to get it done. And if you liked the video, feel free to give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Otherwise, we'll catch you guys on the next one.